Tonight, we are thrilled to have Peter Shapiro with us for a discussion of his new book, The Music Never Stops. While putting on 10,000 shows has taught me about life, liberty, and the pursuit of magic. Independent music entrepreneur Peter Shapiro continues to explore a range of passion projects. He has owned and operated renowned venues, Brooklyn Bowl Las Vegas, Brooklyn Bowl Nashville, Brooklyn Bowl Philadelphia, the Capitol Theater, Garcia's, and Wetlands Preserve. In 2015, he produced the Fare Thee Well celebrating 50 years of the Grateful Dead at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California, and Chicago's Soldier Field. Shapiro founded Lock-In, a 4-day music and camping festival held in Nelson County, Virginia, as well as Jazz and Colors, an experiential music event held in Central Park at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He is the creator of Fans, the immersive live streaming platform with its innovative Be in the Stream feature that allows audiences to tune in and appear alongside the artists. He also originated the Rock and Roll Playhouse, developing the Family Concert Series into a weekly national concert series that takes place in over 25 markets across America. His other endeavors include the IMAX concert films U2 3D and All Access, the Jammies Awards Show, and the Green Apple Earth Day Festival, and Easy Rider Live. Shapiro serves as publisher of Relix magazine and sits on the board of a number of civic and charitable organizations, including the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, New York Public Radio, and City Parks Foundation. In 2019, Peter was named chairman of Headcount, one of the leading youth voter engagement and participation organizations in America. Joining Peter in conversation is David Fricke. David Fricke is a music journalist and a Grammy-nominated writer of album liner notes, and he was a staff writer at the Rolling Stone for 3 decades and now contributes to Mojo, Jazz Times, and other publications. He is a 4-time winner of the ASCAPD Deems Taylor Award for Excellence in Music Journalism and is the host of the Writer's Block on SiriusXM. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Peter and David to the stage.
Damn, this is full up. This is crazy. You know, you're actually headlining your own sold-out gig.
I gotta think about that. David's so smart. This is I do this a bunch, but I'm intimidated today because we got the guy.
No, I'm just the guy who stands at the back at the bar and watches the show and takes it all in. It's, you know, one of the things about this book and going to your shows and hanging out with you at those gigs is that it's really about live music as a communal and enervating experience. You know, the idea is that when you walk in, maybe you do have expectations, but with any luck, those expectations will be changed, they'll be transformed, and at a great show, and I experienced this at the Cap the whole time, going to the Wetlands, going to, you know, see Mike Campbell at Brooklyn Bowl just in March. The idea is you walk in one person, you come out another. And that's really what a great live experience does. And it seems that in many ways, either consciously or even subconsciously, that's really a big part of your aesthetic. You know, to change people in that moment, in the room, in a way that's going to make them feel better about life and the world when they walk out.
Wow, okay, it was good to see everybody. We'll see you later, we're done.
Like, what do you think about when you're planning a show beyond, because you have to plan beyond logistics. Otherwise it's like architecture, you're just building something to make sure it stands up.
Well, I learned that, fortunately, at Wetlands from Larry Block, who created Wetlands. The irony is in 1989 when he opened, he was a deadhead, and the idea of Wetlands was to create a home for deadheads in New York. There hadn't really been one. And he picked the corner, he's like, of Hudson and Late in Tribecca, which he's like, I picked a spot I thought no one would ever want to live. We'd be able to be there forever, because if you guys know, it's the exit to the Holland Tunnel. in New York. Ironically, now it's like, $10 million apartments. But Larry built a place that it wasn't even going to be a live music venue at first. It was a hang for deadheads. So it was built on communal first. Actually, it's interesting. I don't even think
it's like he had the idea, then he got the liquor license.
Yeah, no. He had the idea of a place to gather and hang out first. The live music wasn't planned. Even Brooklyn Bowl was at first probably more hang, some live music, but we never expected what happened. But at Wetlands, a couple things. So it's a venue. We had columns kind of like this. We had wood floors a bit like this. And sometimes when things are not planned, you mentioned maybe some of it's subconscious. That's often when things are the best. By the way, the kind of music we like, and I have a feeling most of the people here, the whole thing about going to improvisational music, jam music, Grateful Dead music, it doesn't always work. You don't know where it's going to go. And
they didn't always have great nights.
They didn't.
But the great nights made it worth going to the nights that weren't so great because you didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the magic we all chase and we need. And because when that moment happens, it feels, you go to 11. When you go see a great show, Rage Against the Machine I saw last night, great show. But they know where they're going in that show, and they're going to play again tonight, and it'll be probably the same show. But there's just a different thing when you aspire to see where it goes. Larry also required that bands play 2 sets, especially on weekends, because the idea was you have to hang out with your friends. You don't have a choice. And if you're there alone, you have to meet people. The other thing about Wetlands is just like this place right now, we can't all see. I can't see. I see you, Bruce. But because of these columns, no, it's true. This is pretty good sightlines, actually. Wetlands, when it was sold out, by the way, we're sold out today, thank you. And they said that doesn't usually happen. We're still a promoter, DJ Logic just, what's up, Chase? You couldn't always see the show on a sellout. And so that caused, you could hear the show everywhere, but you couldn't see it always. So you'd go to the bar, 20% of the people, or downstairs in the basement. And so Wetlands, a lot of people would be like, it wasn't the best place to see a show, but it was one of the best places to go to a show. And I meet a lot, oh, thanks. I meet people, and maybe, I don't know if anyone here, but if this happens, I swear, people will be like, yo, dude, I met my wife at Wetlands, or I met my husband. We had an intern at Relix in the studio the other day who came up to me and was like, I exist. Because, I swear to God, because, no, it wasn't that he was created at Wetlands, but his parents met at Wetlands. But, so they met in the lounge. So you met people, because in Bowery Ballroom is a perfect venue, but I don't think people necessarily, you're watching the show, you're just there. You have a perfect sight line. You're not meeting your wife or your husband at Bowery show.
It's definitely a different vibe. Now, one of the things, and I'm sure everyone here...
By the way, I look subconsciously, I can't help, but we got to slide you over one, and Jake needs a little more space. I can't even look at it. It's so closed up, I can't do it. So you got to move your bag and slide over, and now I feel better.
All right.
It was bothering me.
Everybody's
so
comfortable.
Yeah, I couldn't do it anymore. It's really bothering.
See, that's what a good promoter does. He looks out for his audience.
That's not that hard to see everyone like this, and that's what we did.
I'm sure everyone here is pretty aware of this. Actually 8 days ago was Jerry Garcia's 80th birthday, August 1st. Today is the 27th anniversary of his passing, August 9th. And given the way the Dead got you started as a filmmaker and have defined much of your career in presenting live music, how much did your time with the Dead and that culture with the fans, whether you were making the film or just going to the gigs, determined the way you saw and conducted the business of presenting music. Because if you look at the Grateful Dead as a live music business, it's supposed to be bound for failure. They were not great businessmen when they started. They found a way to make business work. And a lot of it was that they did not adhere to the norm in ticket sales, catering to audiences, large audiences, their relationships with promoters. It could be said that they were the most successful outlaws in the business of making music and money. What did you learn from the Dead and that culture that enabled you to put on the kind of business you wanted and not lose your shirt?
Well, I have lost my shirt sometimes, but sometimes, but I'm
But
still
you got
here.
a new one.
But I'm here. Yeah, I'm still here. You know, if you pay it forward and you try to do things the right way, you just hope, you know, that hopefully things will work out. And I think the Dead was an ongoing experiment. You know, it's interesting. I think musically they followed Jerry a lot, and that's one reason why post Jerry got more complicated, because they followed him. In music, and I think in a lot of things. And he was improvisational musically and as a person. He would go all around, and for some reason it worked. But he wasn't really a traditional leader. And he would say, here's how we're doing, but they could follow him. And so maybe in some way I don't always, we've talked about there's people here we work with. There is no grand plan. There was not a plan when we started the Bowl. We're gonna have more, we're gonna do this. You just try to do the right thing. Try to create the right environment. And then you wake up the next day. One thing, doing shows 7 days a week. Larry Block fried out. When you do this every day, you know, I've just built up like a lot of endurance, and thanks to my wife here and my kids for letting it be, and my brothers were a big part of it, my parents' support. But I've just built up now from doing it every day. I'm just born, it's part of me. That's hard. Larry needed a break. He did Wetlands for 7, 8 years. It like kind of broke him at the end. It was hard he couldn't do it anymore. And the Grateful Dead, they did it for a long time. Jerry couldn't do it at the end. He died at 53. Have you guys seen pictures of him at the end? That guy was 50. He had been through so much, and so much pressure on him. And there was such I feel so many people's jobs relying on him.
And it's interesting because I was doing research for a set of liner notes that are coming out in the new Dead box, the Madison Square Garden box. And one of the quotes that I found from the actual summer of '71, when he was recording Garcia, he was talking with actually Charles Perry and Jan Winter for that huge interview in Rolling Stone. And he said, look, I just want to play. You know, everything else is just everything else. I just want to play. And whatever it takes to make that happen is great. But the fact that it takes all of this other shit to
I'd
make
like
it
to just
happen
do the shows.
is very much, that's a lot of that pressure.
But you don't have a choice to get to the show.
Yeah.
You have to, we were just talking backstage about things that are happening today, an hour ago, for a show we have falling apart, you know? And you're like making moves to save it, which is a large part of what we all do in being a human in 2022. So much stuff moving around so quickly. One thing I can't believe in, like, go back to '71, and the band. Let's talk the Dead. Let's talk them touring. Let's talk going to Europe. You know, different things. How do you, or in the '70s, or just how did you do that? We all have these phones and communication. Thomas Lamb, who built the Capitol Theater in 1926, if we tried to build that theater today, it would take a decade. It would cost 9 figures, priceless. Thomas Lamb in the 10s and 20s, who is the preeminent architect of theaters in American history, built 100 palace theaters. The Boston Opera House, the original Ziegfeld. How do you do that without CAD drawings, PDF, email, tech? And we couldn't even do that.
It's also interesting, the whole money scale. I worked, one of my first jobs after I got out of college in the music business was I worked PR for a club in Philadelphia called the Main Point, which was just outside the city in Bryn Mawr. And Springsteen played there, Jackson Browne, the Velvet Underground played there at one point. All the great folk artists, Tom Rush, Tom Paxton, Janis Ian. And the thing that always struck me was that when we booked an act, it was usually for a 4-day weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And
we love runs.
And then
too.
sometimes you would do like a single night. And we booked a single night in, I think it was February or March of '75 with Eric Burden as a solo act. He had a really great band, all black musicians. And they did a lot of Animal songs, really hard rock stuff. And we were looking for an opening act. And I happened to mention to the booking guy at the club, I said, you know, there's this act out of New York. She just put out a single. And I think she'd really be great opening for Eric Burden. It was Patti Smith. Nice. So we booked Eric Burden. The opening act was Patti Smith. It was Patti with Lenny, Kay, Richard Saul, and Ivan Krall had just joined. No drummer yet. J.D. wasn't in the band. We got her for $125 for each show, 2 shows that night. And I remember interviewing Patti later on, and I mentioned, you know, I was the guy that got you that booking. She said, oh, wow, that's amazing. I have a confession to make. We stole the salad bowl that was in the dressing room. It was like, they were so broke. It was like, it was a really nice bowl. Nobody seemed to want it, so. But it was like $125 to book Patti Smith for one set, $125 for the second set. And when you think of the money that you've got to deal with now just to get the doors open, it's got to be kind of heart-stopping.
Yeah, we're still trying to sell some Steely Dan tickets tomorrow night if you want. Teed it up for it now.
You've been duly informed.
Yeah, for Wednesday, Friday, so it's going to be great. But we still do have, in some ways, technology's made it easier. You know, like we just added, and like Steely's gonna play certain albums, and we could announce that today. You know, help her. One thing to go back to Wetlands, like if we do a last second show, it's easier for us. Brooklyn Bowl got so many last minute Guns N' Roses, Kanye, The Roots and Elvis, where because the nature of that venue is to be open every day, and we know we're going to be open, and the staff is booked, and we have the email list, we can sit here tonight, and if Patti was here, let's say Patti Smith, and we say, Patti, we want to do you, I don't think we could do 24 hours, but 48 hours. Today's Tuesday, we could do Thursday. We could announce it tonight, go on sale tomorrow, Wednesday. We'd send an email, we'd hit the socials, we'd go on sale tomorrow for Thursday. Since we already have Brooklyn Bowl in New York planning to be open, we already have security and the managers and the team and production ready. But other venues that don't have that, when they're not going to be open in 48 hours, they can't pivot that fast. So that helped us get a lot of those last minute shows. And the other thing, when we would do a last second show at Wetlands, we couldn't do 48 hours. You didn't have the email and the socials in the 90s. We'd have to go to the radio station, Q104 or class, you know, or whoever it would be, to announce it. We would do flyers, and we'd need to like go outside of other shows, last second and flyer. And so it was much harder. I don't know how I got here, but it was much harder back in the Wetlands days to do the last second show.
But that's actually something you still do up the Cap, because whenever I go to the Cap on the way out, they hand out those cards that have all the gigs, and which are, they're great bookmarks, by the way.
There's a whole team here who helps us. By the way, we don't just give out cards. Stephanie, I think she maybe the marketing head, who was great, came up with an idea, right? So how do you innovate? It's a digital world, but analog, being at the show, promoting at the show, still not only still matters, it's what the Cap is. You know, we have volunteer ushers. You know, that doesn't happen. But look, Squirrel Squad's here. We have people wearing the shirt in about, oh no, it's not a specific show. Hold on, no. But usually we make an orange shirt like that, and it'll say like Humphreys McGee, November 23rd and 24th. We'll post the upcoming show we want to promote on the orange shirt, and we give them a free shirt in exchange for wearing the shirt. That's pretty good. We give you a free shirt, but the deal is you got to just wear the shirt. I think that makes sense. It's an amalgamation, so we do the digital and
to sort of get back to this aspect of the dead. What would you say were your first personal encounters with the surviving members after Jerry's passing, and how did those relationships develop in a way that you could ultimately in 2015 do Fare Thee Well? Because one of the things that's been very interesting about your relationship with them is that particularly you've been able to navigate this thing with and between Bob Weir and Phil Lesh, so that you could do Fare Thee Well, you could do that run of shows like at Radio City in 2017. It's like you're the horse whisperer. You know, because in so many other ways, for all of their bond and I think deep unity, there are profound differences, and it shows in the way they've continued on, Phil with Phil and Friends, Bob with Dead and Company. How would you characterize that relationship that you have with them?
Fortunately, I have a relationship with each of them. I think a big part of Fare Thee Well happening was the role of the Cap, because Phil, I made that deal with Phil, came to play the Cap in 2012, and he fell in love with it, and his wife Jill, they realized right away, Phil, he's 82 now, so he was 72. They knew, like, we don't need to go do Boston, Philly, DC on the bus. We'll just play here. And we have a similar thing at Terrapin in San Francisco. And I bet the farm just that we did a 45-show deal. I just, from going to shows and knowing that world, knowing why this thing at the Strand is sold out and the others don't. It's the audience. I just knew it doesn't fade. So I bet that Phil wouldn't fade at the Cap. And so we do this big deal, and Fare Thee Well is coming up, the 50th anniversary. I tried to get the 40th. I was a young guy, wrote letters to the dead, and I went and met with their manager, and I did. And I didn't get it. But I talked in the book a little bit about no's lead to yeses. Sometimes you need to get a no. No's can be helpful. To like, I'm glad I tried for 40, because later, when I wrote that letter for 50, the letter was better, because I was like, I tried for 40, I'm back. It's true, verse I didn't say. But so here's a good one, and it's being filmed. Well, we're not going live, so I won't get in too much trouble. I don't think I'll get in trouble. I don't care, it's too late. Phil loves playing with new people. That's his mission, is turning new people on to the music. And it's been great to bring all these new people into it. That's what he was excited about. But 50th anniversary's coming up. And the other three guys, I think, were definitely interested in doing it. And Phil was having a good time with Phil and Friends. And other people started approaching the band, including Phil, with big money offers. Your 50th anniversary is coming up. Here's a huge offer for 50, and this is 2013 and 14 probably. But there's one problem. It's hard to get an answer from someone when you can't reach them. Phil was off in Phil land, you know, and you couldn't reach him. He was doing his thing. And fortunately, he had to come see me, because he had to come to the Capitol Theater. He had to play his gigs. And there were times when Phil would come to the Cap, and Phil and Jill knew that I was going to be there, looking to talk to them about Dead 50. They once walled off an area right over here, side stage, with curtains, and they stayed in there. This is true. I don't even think this is in the book. They were walling it off, so I couldn't get to them. It's the truth. Robbie Taylor was like, Shapiro!
You were like in a COVID isolation in your own venue.
They were isolated so that Pete couldn't get to them to pitch them on Dead 50. But I I got to them. Maybe the next time. And I got to talk to them and explain that I thought that why I thought Phil should do Dead 50. And he agreed to it. And
but what was the reason that you think tripped him over that said, okay, maybe I'm more open than I thought I was?
I said it would be, it was important for the scene and the community for Dead 50 to happen. And in this age of the internet and talk, like if he didn't do it, it would be clear that it was because he didn't want to do it.
Did you bring him Trey as the possible avatar for Jerry?
Maybe yes, maybe.
What do you mean, maybe? It's statute of limitations is over. You can tell us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, I don't think that was that hard. You know, people are like, you know, when we did it, a lot of people, we went to Soldier Field, partly because I grew up in Chicago. I did school in Chicago. I love Chicago. I knew they'd embrace it in Chicago in a way other cities, even New York or San Fran, wouldn't. And we saw that with like the after shows and the pizza place doing boxes.
But the other thing about that show was the programming, because what they did and what you allowed them to do was walk into Soldier Field on July 3rd and open with the song that they last played with Jerry at Soldier Field at that last show, which was Box of Rain.
Box of Rain.
The programming in that says as much about the experience as everything else attending.
There were a lot of reasons. Chicago was obvious, you know, because it was the place they had finished. It was 20 years. It was 95, pretty much exactly. It lined up July 3, 4, 5, everything, and we thought people would leave and the Deadheads would come and we would take over Chicago and that the venues would do Dead, and that all happened. We can get to that later. But I grew up going to Phish shows too. And anyone here, and there's some people I know are here, that love Trey, and it just wasn't that hard. I went and saw Trey play with Phil at the Warfield in '98 with my friends, and I love road tripping to shows. That's why we do all these multi-night runs at the Cap, because I know I'd want to go do it, and it works. We can get that. That's a whole nother thing. But the Trey thing was, to me, and to anyone, not that hard to figure out, and I just thought 1 + 1 would be like 5, and it would say. And actually, an interesting thing, the Grateful Dead never sold an online ticket. Jerry Garcia died in 1995. The first online ticket by Ticketmaster was 1996. So no one knew really what the demand. When we first came out, we're like 3 Soldier Fields. There were some people who thought that was ambitious. And there was a sign online, someone had an empty, you know, because the Dead then, we had just done the 9 nights at the Cap, God bless the Cap, but that's where they were playing. But I just thought, and it's not that hard again, that Trey and the Dead would just be times X. And so we went on sale. And I remember where I was at Chelsea Piers at a soccer game with my daughter, I think Roxy, or it might have been Simon, actually. Sorry. I think it was fun. It was 2015. It was 11:30 a.m. I got a call because we went on sale at noon. It was a Saturday. That's when you go on sale. And my friend and we got the call. I got it from my friend Mike Luba. We did it. And this is like 11:50. It's about to go at noon. They can measure in the online queue how many people are waiting to buy tickets. And we were all wondering, how's it going to do? We didn't know it quite, you know. And we got the word that there were more people in the online queue. Because we don't know, they've never sold an online ticket. They did mail order. No one really knows how many Deadheads are there. There's no way till the onset. There were more people in the online queue than any concert Ticketmaster had ever done online to that point.
It's almost as if it was it's like if it was a physical
in America.
line.
Led Zeppelin had built.
It's like if it was a physical line at the box office at the Capitol, it would have gone from Portchester all the way to Schenectady.
It ended up being like too much demand, as the people here knew. Like then, so it was amazing at first. We were like, oh my, this is incredible. It blew out. We could have sold Soldier Field 60 times. There were like 700,000 people who all would have bought each night, and the 8-ticket minimum, you know? And so 700,000 times 8, it's like 6 million, and they would have bought the 3 nights, 18. I mean, it was literally that kind of math. So we were like, this is amazing. And then like 10, 15 minutes later, when we were getting calls that it was like, by the way, you can go on Craigslist and post that you have dead tickets, you have Fare Thee Well tickets, without having the Fare Thee Well tickets. So you could go post and be like, 10 G's. I'm not kidding, 5 G's, 1 G. You don't have the tickets. So tons of that started going up. Whether you had the ticket or not, you'd go, but so, and then everyone went nuts, being like, holy shit, you know, and then we were like, oh, Joe, Concert Joe. By the way, Concert Joe is here. He set the record, the most concerts in 1 year.
All right.
And his phone just went off, Everyday Charlie telling you got to go to a show. But you'll tell him you're here. By the way, Joe sends brownies and cakes every time we have a birthday. He's the best fan there is. And fan. Sorry. We set anyways, we knew we were screwed, actually. We were in trouble because there was so much demand. So then we went, and thank God, we started looking and being like, we got to add, how do you solve that? There's only one note, we need more shows.
So you did Santa Clara.
So we went, thank God that stadium was available. It was so big. Yeah. We couldn't get Golden Gate Park. And we got Santa Clara. And we actually tried a new way of ticketing. We were able to do a lottery. Oh, and the mail order happened. Yeah. And so, as most of you all know, the Grateful Dead ticketing, you do an envelope, you enter a card, you draw colorful pictures on your envelope, you send it to California. And the post office, we were waiting, how many envelopes are going to show up in San Rafael? And nothing on the first day, nothing on the set. And then we got a call on, I think the third day, they hit like, holy shit, we just got 10,000. And then on the next day, they got like 50,000. And they were stacked up in a room. So the demand was just nuts. But and then we went and did the shows. And then serendipity happened. We got lucky.
But given the demand for those shows, why was Wetlands not sustainable? You actually closed it in September 2000, right after 9/11, and you talk in the book about being, you know,
all those venues.
Right
that's why the Knitting Factory's gone down there, or the TNR bought. Like when a neighborhood gentrifies, and you own a building, and you have a rock club that's paying, you know, 30 grand a month in rent. It's pretty good money for the landlord. 350 grand, 360. I got it, man. Then you can, and you're renting floors, but you can convert it to condos.
So really, there wasn't enough audience to sustain the economics, especially after that event.
No, he converted to condos. Yeah. The reason why I was able to take over Wetlands at a young age was because the lease wasn't super long. If the lease had been 20 years, I never would have probably owned it, because someone more sophisticated and older built it. But because it was not that long, everyone knew what was happening in Tribecca. That's the irony. He picked the spot. He's like, manufacturing, loud, Holland Tunnel. No one will ever want to live here. It'll stay a rock club forever. That was '89.
Because Don Hills was down there too.
Yeah. The Knit, Tribecca, a bunch of clubs. What about the club next to us? Area, Vinyl, remember all that. But everyone, all those buildings, if you go down there now, and there's someone here who lives on Lake Street, it's all been converted. And the landlord, there was too much money in a conversion. You know, it doesn't make sense to keep the rock club. And then once you're running a rock club near housing, near rich people, those people not only complain, but they know how to reach like Chuck Schumer and stuff. Like they give the money to the politicians, so when they call and complain, the cops show up. It's true, you know. So, by the way, used to have. There's another thing. When Rudy was mayor, there was something called the nightlife crackdown. That's when what shows up is the health department, consumer affairs, liquor authority, and go down the list. And there's no way you can survive that.
But why aren't you having that problem in Brooklyn? Because there is gentrified now.
Rudy's
as Tribecca. Oh. Or are you getting the calls from Chuck Schumer?
Oh, no, now we host the benefit for Chuck. We figured it out. We did. By the way, there's a lot of moving parts. And part of it is you do want to host the event for the good guys.
Chuck comes in, he gets the bowl for free, everything's cool.
Well, he helped in the end of the NEVA thing. And by the way, people who are Republican, Democrat, support taxes, don't. I'll tell you one thing we learned, like when the shit hit the fan a couple years ago, everyone, blue or red, but some of those red people were like, give me that government help. I want that government money, that government help. So I'm just saying, you know. That is the truth. But Chuck helped a lot with that. We host benefit things for whoever, anyone can do it, but we've done Kamala and Obama and Clinton, and because we have a good space for it at Brooklyn Bowl. But you want to be smart. It's also helpful, the mayor, because you may need help. Things go wrong. You got to know your police department. You got to know your community.
That's a very interesting aspect of that culture that you come from, because you actually we've talked about this when we did our radio thing the other day, you come from activist stock, your family was very involved in Jewish philanthropy and civil rights, and the thing about Dead Oins is that, and that jam band scene is, it's a common stereotype of being very blissed out, noodle dancing, everybody following the band on tour, maybe not being as responsible in straight life as you would think, but in fact, you started at the Wetlands with Larry Block, as you say, it was an activist club. It was not a music room.
Thanks for
and a lot of the activism that you're involved with, that the music represents, seems to be a lot stronger than the stereotype. What accounts for the stereotype and the fact that that streak of being engaged with society for the better hasn't dimmed, especially at a time in this country when people could be forgiven for just saying, fuck all this, I'm done, because it's genuinely broken.
Whew, that's a lot. One thing I'll say, Wetlands was a pre-internet place, built '89, people getting together. One of the ideas was creating a place for organizations like Amnesty International or Rainforest Action Network to have a meeting. It's like, who gets involved in activism? Usually it's young people. Okay, where are we gonna get them to meet? The bookstore, this is actually a pretty good space. The library, the school, the park, the rock club. Well, maybe if we have the meetings at the rock club, they'll come at, we offer it to Amnesty. And that was the idea that Larry had. We would use the rock club pre-show in that basement to have meetings, because there was no meetup.org. There were no chat rooms when he started in 89, 90, 91. And then we would put up pamphlets and information on the walls. If anyone remember that. So that was the idea of Wetlands, was to use the place to do good. And I just learned from there that you can have fun and be having fun and still do positive things. And that was actually really the idea of head count. I don't know if Andy's here. I think that head count is like at the show, every major festival, Bonnaroo, we just did Lollapalooza, or Outside Lands. Like, you're there, more Billie Eilish, Ariana Grande, where 16, 17, 18-year-olds are. We're on Billie Eilish tour now. Let's register people to vote here at the show, or check your voting stat. That's simple. It's not even that hard. And it's easy to get frustrated, but we don't have a choice, And Headcount's registered 1 million people. We did 500,000 in 2020. We use the shows. It comes out of Wetlands. And now the internet's changed things. We don't need the venue quite as much. But it's cool. Wetlands was an analog place. Or Wetlands, that's where it was built upon first. A communal hang, the activism, the music came second, and the first band was a New Potato Caboose, the bands were, and then we were just talking backstage, you have your CD, is it here? And then we ended up getting Pearl Jam, Oasis, Rage Against the Machine was playing the Garden, first shows, New York, and obviously the Jam, Traveler, Dave, Widespread.
We were talking about this the other day. One of the shows I really remember about Wetlands, and Oasis had already played there in July of '94. There's a live album that Jeff Buckley recorded at Wetlands. It's online from August of '94. I got to see them on the same bill in October of '94. Jeff opened for Oasis at a CMJ show. This is why I like living in New York and why I really liked Wetlands, because that was just it was an amazing night, and completely just like, man, it's business as usual down here. That's
right. It was open to everything. Well, here, the hippies, what you can say a lot about them. They're open-minded. They're open-minded musically. When you go to a lot of different kinds of genre shows, Rage last night.
It's the Bill Graham vibe. You know, when Bill Graham would have the Woody Herman Orchestra with The Who, or Charles Lloyd with the Steve Miller Band. That's really one of the things I miss about concerts today, is that kind of booking that really brings education into it. But actually, one thing we need to do is we want to do this as like a second set thing, where we actually do some jamming. And I think Dean Budnick needs to get his ass up
I want
here.
to say one thing. Well, first up, one thing on Wetlands. Wetlands in 24 hours on a Saturday morning, or 36 hours. Saturday morning, noon, we do ska. Saturday night, we'd have a jam scene. Sunday morning, we'd do hardcore at noon. And then Sunday night, we'd have the Roots. So in that period, it was probably 36 hours, you would see 4 different groupings of people. And by the way, at each group, the ska kids looked the same. White t-shirt, rolled up. The hippie kids looked the same, backpack, maybe carrying a frisbee. The hardcore guys looked the same. By the way, not many venues would do a show. You have 700, 800 people and a $400 bar because everyone's drinking water and you need 14 security.
Well, actually, if you went to the Beacon, they'd confiscate the frisbee.
Right, and then hippies. So you'd see people seeking the same thing in the same place, like a church, all looking like different religions. But I just want to hit on the book thing quickly. When the idea for this, the reason why I did it was entirely really because of the person who came to me and suggested it, because he's been around with me for most of it. And he is a Harvard PhD. He knows the story of our scene as well as you, because you're very learned.
If he's got a Harvard PhD, he knows it better than me.
He's got a Harvard PhD. So Dean Budnick, who's the co-editor, also or editor of Relix with Mike Greenhouse, and directed the Wetlands movie. We did the jam. He said, "Have you ever written anything down?" And I had not. And he said, "Let's do this together." And he really is the reason I did the book. And I said every word. He said, "You can just talk," which is not that hard. And he'll write it all. So he wrote it all. I said it all. He wrote it all. And he's here, Dean.
All right, come on.
Stand up. We're gonna ask him a question.
Come on, we're jamming here. This is the second set improv. This is drums in space. One of the things that
And then Q&A is gonna be the closer.
One of the things I'm curious about is how you and Peter figured out which shows to focus on, and aside from instant recall, what was the paperwork you had to jog your memory? I'm assuming that being a promoter, you had a diary in the form of contracts.
Oh, we didn't need any of that. First of all, as you can imagine, I mean, we probably came up with 60 off the top of our heads, just thinking about the important shows, the entertaining moments, the important, all that came together quickly. It was really not a matter of coming up with 50. It was a matter of winning it down from probably 65 or 70.
The story of how the book's framed, it's structured.
Oh, right. So, the book, it's structured around 50 shows. And in coming up with them, it was easy. I mean, it was simple.
All right, if you had 65 out of the 50, what were the ones you left out?
Yo, bro, don't ruin volume 2. I don't.
No.
We don't. Do you want?
You got me down here to do this.
Dean,
Answer the question.
The thing is, what we would do is if we had a show that we decided not to feature in its own chapter, we folded it into another chapter. Like we could have done multiple jammies, for instance, but we just essentially did one and made a couple other points. We tightened up some of the Wetlands shows, some of the Cap stuff, some of the Brooklyn Bowl stuff. I mean, it was just a matter of what was representative of some really cool things that were important to Peter and his career and to the scene as a whole.
What would have been your pivotal moments among these shows? Obviously, this is his story and he's telling it in his words, but as someone who's helping to shape this story and get it into a form that everybody can really dive in, what would have been shows that are in here? Obviously, Fare Thee Well would be something.
Right. If people haven't seen it, pulled up the book. Look at this beautiful wraparound cover. Look at that, right?
We haven't talked about
the rainbow at Santa Clara. I mean,
that's the Santa Clara rainbow.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we did Fare Thee Well, basically, and there were a lot of people like this. There's no Jerry. Trey's an abomination. You know, it's just not. This is not right. And then at the end of the first set, this rainbow came out, and it's been with me ever, kind of since. But so we knew this would be a chapter.
Although
That's not Photoshop, by the way. That's the real deal.
Well, although for people who weren't,
here we go.
There's also this moment where that same show.
Well, when we did the first thing we did was we hired a skywriter to do a peace sign in the air, pre-show. We thought it'd be cool. And it didn't really work out. You'll get it in your book. You can kind of see he was doing great, and then he missed the last stripe. So honestly, we were like, that was our first thing. We hired a peace sign skywriter, and he missed it. It was completely off.
Don't hire a skywriter who used to do Panama Red. That's not a good idea.
He had eaten some gummies before we were like, oh my God, we just spent all this money on the skywriter, and he missed the last.
You got some guy from like the Free Mexican Air Force who used to ferry shit back and forth. It's like.
So anyhow, that's that. I mean, his first like important moment, Ken Nordine freaks him out at Rosemont Horizon. He runs out into the crowd, sees a bunch of kids in shakedown on bongos and the like, has his moment, and that leads him right the next day. He's a student at Northwestern. He's at Doors, right? When you open doors at a venue, you're at Doors. He's there at Doors at the library for the first time in his life to find out about the Grateful Dead. Was there ever a movie about the Grateful Dead? And so that's obviously a chapter. The opening of the Cap, right? His pivotal moments at Wetlands. He opens a show, essentially his first big show, and loses $10,000, right? 10 grand. And he learns, it's harder sometimes than one might think. So there's a lot of things like that. I
lost 10% of the money I had in the first night. That will, and it's in the book. I'm healthy now, but I had a little heart thing from all the stress. That's hard. That's what if you win promoting a show, you make $10. Let's just use that. Hold on. If you lose on a show, you lose 100. That's the model.
They don't have numbers that bad in Vegas.
You can't win. You win. That's why Live Nation can do it. A company that plays that game 4,000 times a night. But if you're just one guy, same with the festival business, we can get out. Or it's just hard. What I've learned I say it gets easier. It never gets easy. But when you're alone, it's actually the hardest. Right, and you're doing everything, and you have to do it all. That's hard. And actually, another interesting thing I think it's in the book. I turned to Dean to be like, "Is this in the book?" Because I don't know. When you do a show for 600 people at Wetlands, you need a box office person, a talent booker, a stage manager, the DJ, the manager. A lot of the things.
The bartenders?
The bartenders, but even just staging, lights, sound, booking, box office, security. You need that at 600. It's better to do it at 1,800.
Yeah.
Because you don't need three, you still need the booker, the stage manager, the economics are particularly hard at 600.
Actually, one thing I want to ask you, we talk in the book, the first, Rosemont Horizon, his first Dead show, his first Fish show in '92. What was your first show?
My first
Your first
dead
gig?
show, my first fish.
No, your first gig, period.
My first
The
show.
first show that you saw that said, okay,
well,
my life is different now.
So I'm a proud Rhode Islander. John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band.
All right,
Okay. At the original Lupo's, when I was the original Lupo's, when I was 16, which is the only place that you could drink in Rhode Island, based. Oh, not the only place, but you could have these giant scorpion bowls, and so that was it. John Cafferty
Wow.
and the Beaver Brown Band. By the way, one more point I want to make about just the stories in the book is, which always still sort of gets to me, is that at the same time that Peter is working on this event, and you'll read this right in the book, is he's going bankrupt in Vegas. And so he has to deal simultaneously in his head, right? Cognitive dissonance. He has to sort of deal with these two realities. And it's just amazing to me.
Almost going bankrupt. I didn't go.
Sorry.
Almost, a very key word there.
The paperwork was, yes, but almost en route. Close, but didn't. But I mean, and that to me is sort of the glory of the book. And by the way, Peter talks a lot in the book about things that didn't necessarily happen and near misses and moments. It's all balanced out together. I mean, the treat of, aside from just talking to Peter on the phone all the time while we were doing this and hashing out the 50, was just sort of hearing all the stories and his approach to a lot of things. And it really, that sort of animated the book, knowing how Peter approaches not only business but life. And I'm like, well, that's a book.
Well, this
That's a book I'd like to-
actually gets to an interesting point, and you can both address this, because one of the things about the book, it addresses music, it addresses specific concerts, performances, anecdotes, the business of putting the shows on, the activist aspect of head count and the various benefits that you've worked on. Is it a business or is it a mission? And when you think about the Dead and the 60s and how they managed to make it both, how do you do that and keep afloat, you actually keep it honest, and you keep the audience engaged in a way that is going to make them want to come in and be a part of the mission as well as the business? Because as Bill Graham showed, to a profound degree, if you don't take care of the audience, you have no business. And therefore, the mission is dead.
I'm going to pass that to my co-author. That's the game. That's the whole thing. It's that balance. And
I guess it's one of my
but-
big issues is we call it the music business. And yet, for me, music is not a business. It's like I often say, I write about music for a living, but I listen to it for my life. And if you don't have that,
right,
then everything else is interesting, but your life doesn't. Your life doesn't.
You know what I
change in
tell
the middle
people?
of it.
You ready? I got one answer for that. Is I haven't made the money yet. Really, I think if I had made a whole bunch of money, I actually think it would impact the way that I am just living this. I have one life, as my family knows, and it is. Well, I also. I'm with them a lot. Sometimes I might be checking my phone or booking a show on the side. You can do it easily now. But I don't see a blend. I do see it as something that I can see it easily, like Jake sitting there, because I'm a fan. Like, it's not that hard for me. It's very easy to go into a venue to see what's right and what's wrong. The problem now is when I'm not in my own place and I see things that are wrong. And I sometimes want to tell someone.
It's like me reading a magazine
or at a
and
restaurant,
I see typos.
I know, and I want to say something. But by the way, everything matters at a show. The ushers are here, the bathroom experience, the box office line. If you go to a show and you have a super long line at the box office, it'll throw you off. If you go to the bar and it's 18 deep, it'll throw off your vibe. Like if the air, and that I believe. So we try and if I see something off, I do right away. And I'm not at all the shows now, so I'm sure I'm missing. I went to a Rock and Roll Playhouse Kids show this weekend at Garcia's, and the drummer was playing too loud right away. Just instant, and not that hard for me. So for me, it's one, I love it. I love the shows still. Never fades. I'm going to show not except for tonight. I went to
You are
Rings
the
last
show
night.
tonight.
I'm going to Steely Dan Wednesday, and then my wife and I are going to Sunday. But I'm going to go see Gaga on Thursday at MetLife, and then Steely Dan on Friday. And that's because I want to go see what Gaga's show is like at MetLife, and it's fun to do big things. And I'm working on a couple big things now and get to work with you too. We haven't talked about that. That's in the book. Like those guys. And I come from Grateful Dead Jam. But that is the pinnacle of live. If you ask me, the great, especially in South America, you see that band and what they can do to make. And that's why I hit that Wetlands, The Roots, Agnostic Front, Skadanks, Mo. All 4 of those bands in 48 at last, 2 days. And you see the reaction. We could see it at Wetlands. It's the same church, temple, congregation. And they would come in, get their groove on, seeking their release from the crazy world. They would leave, and then the next group would come in. They just have, hippie backpack on, and the first kids had white t-shirts on. So we don't quite do 4 shows in 2 days anymore at the Bowl or the Cap, but we do. Actually, Brooklyn Bowl worked because on a Saturday, we figured most clubs, like Wetlands, we would have shows that tanked. And when your show is soft and they come in at 8 o'clock, even before cell phones, no one else would come in. It would just be like magic. Where is everyone? Once people don't come in, they see it's kind of empty. No one else seems to come in. It's a dead night. So that's the correlation. We built Brooklyn Bowl to have less dead nights. The Bowl, I swear. Because we always had the baseline of Bowl, some people hanging. And when people come into a place and see other people, it's like they just appear. It's same as like Wooks at a Phil Les show. This is in the book. This happened twice in my life. Once in Central Park, I did Phil Les and Friends. This is a true story. I love Central Park Summer Stage. I'm on a board there, by the way. You got to do the first Dead thing there. And we talked about it. Wook Rock. There is a rock outside Central Park Summer Stage. This is true. I was there in the late afternoon, pre-show. There was nothing there. It was just that rock. And over the next few hours, I swear they weren't like walking in. They were just coming up out of the rock. The Deadheads. And then it also happened at Locken once. Yeah. I'll go to my grave believing this happened, I swear. The first year of Locken, if anyone's there, we did Phil late night at the Triangle Stage. Gillespie saw this happen. We went up after, I think it was String Cheese and Zach Brown. We go, and it was far, a mile. You had to walk there and walk there. You got there. There were not a lot of people there. I was like, shit, it's too far away, the late night, from the main stage. I hope everyone gets there. It's quiet. Phil's going to play.
Sorry to interrupt at this
Hold on, I just want to say one thing. The Wooks are coming out of the ground. They start, they start appearing out of nowhere and out of the ground. That's a true story. Now we'll go to the Q&A.
Right, now we
the Wooks, they come out of the ground.
Bring it on.
It's true.
So, we have microphones on this side of the room and on that side of the room. So if people want to raise their hands, we will pick someone and we will give you the microphone. Does anybody have any questions?
This guy here.
Let's go right down the front here.
I got them.
I just want to say, on a scale of 1 to 10 in negotiation, 1 being Tiberius, 10 being Robert Plant, how hard was the negotiation to get yourself to appear here tonight?
By the way, a good promoter catches that. Come on, I'm going to drop that with David Fricke. By the way, how about David Fricke, the most knowledgeable person in you? An honor. Thank you for doing this. You ready? Here's the answer. It was on Fricke, right? We were like, once Fricke said yes, we were like, done. That's like promoting. We had a great fucking co-bill.
You can take this thing on the road, man.
Yeah. When you have David Fricke, you just say yeah. But I'm not doing a lot of I don't want to. It was hard. We're not like. Part of me didn't want to do this. I didn't want to be that guy. But Dean, I'm really glad I did it. In chemistry, like after the final, when you're like, I'm never gonna have to know chemistry ever again. I get to forget like a lot of the stuff that was like in my brain, I don't have to remember it again because now it's all here. It's true, I do feel relief.
Okay, do we have another question?
Come on, don't be shy. Otherwise, you have to listen to
Okay,
me.
I see one.
Hey, Pete. I've always wondered this. Why don't American festivals have iterations overseas? And why don't like European festivals have iterations in America? Just something I've been thinking about recently. Like, why has there never been
Tomorrowland?
like a Lock-In or a Bonnaroo in London? Any insight on like why that isn't really something you see?
We'll take that in a note. It's a good point. There's such different worlds, and actually we had that experience going to Europe. Like in America, Government Mule is like Southern rock. When you have Government Mule play your venue, you're gonna probably set your bar record. But if you do Government Mule in England, it's blues rock. And it's pretty sedate, the crowd. I'm not kidding. And they're just different in England. They start drinking earlier. They drink pints of beer, a lager, through the day. In America, they start drinking later at the show, and they do tequila shots. We did Government Mule at Brooklyn Bowl in London. We didn't sell any tequila. And we didn't sell a lot of beer because by the time they got there, they'd already had like 4 pints. So they had to top off 1 or 2 more. And so anyways, better to do Government Mule in America.
But it's also interesting because it seems like, and your Government Mule point is really relevant because, say, Fish have not really toured overseas. When they toured Europe back in like the 90s, they played it in Amsterdam. They played at the Paradiso, which is a club in an old church. I saw the Stones there once. The Specials would play there. It was like their version of a Brooklyn Bowl or a Wetlands. They wouldn't even do theaters. So in many ways, that culture has not translated abroad to the same degree. And like even the Dead, how many times, you can count on one hand the number of times the Dead toured Europe in 30 years.
Yeah, it's space rock there, right? What's here. And we booked at Wetlands the big jam band from England. What were they called again?
Oh,
Thank
Osric
you.
Tentacles.
Osric
yeah.
Tentacles. I'm looking at Joe. You were there. But Joe was there with like 189 other people. By the way, we paid them a lot, like 15 grand. To get Osric Tentacles, we were like 2 nights, 3 nights. We were so excited. We got the biggest, we had Fish from Europe coming to America. That's one of those examples. If it had worked, we'd make $10. We lost like not 100, we lost like 150. We lost a lot.
That was,
But
a lot,
your
that was
mission-
a lot of shirts, right?
But mission, it was like, but are you gonna do, if you own
Yeah.
Wetlands, are you doing Osric Tentacles? Yes, you do it, because why? Because that's, what else are you doing if you're not doing the top jam band from Europe? Like we do, and we did a lot. But I got smarter a little bit. The Brooklyn Bowl model ended up,
Because you tried it in London.
and it was different, just didn't quite, you know what else? No 24-hour train. We were told in England that London, do the bowl, we're out at the O2, there'll be a 24-hour train. The train closed 11:30. They also, remember, they've been drinking
Who
from
told
fucking
you
5
that?
o'clock. They told us there was gonna be a 24-hour train, the guy who gave us the money. Like, it's like, and so we bet on it, and they
You
all
should
go
have called
home.
me. I would have told you.
Yeah,
There's
they
no
wouldn't get past
24-hour
it.
train.
No, that they were gonna pass it. They were gonna
Oh.
open it. No, yeah, you
No.
don't think they...
No.
We should have listened to David Fricke earlier, you know. But no harm, no. We figured out what works. It's working in America. Where it really works is Nashville. It just, we didn't expect it to work this well. One quick thing on why it works: we can book a band and pay them the same as they make at Irving Plaza, where tickets have to be $35 for that band to get 10 grand, let's say. We can pay the band 10 grand and make it $20. Because we have the bowling and the food, or even 15. And so we can give the band more of the door. And we can also give the band 100% of the merch. So now you're the band, you're the manager, you're getting 10 grand at Irving or 10 grand at the bowl But at Irving, it's $35. At the Bowl, it's 15 advance, 20 day off. This is how we did it. You get no walk-up at $35 at Irving Plaza. No one's walking by and saying, what's going on tonight at Irving Plaza? Oh, $35? I've never heard of them. I'm going in. You'll get zero. Not kidding. Brooklyn Bowl, we got lucky. The Williamsburg location turned into this. 15 or $20. What's going on? It's a $20. People will be like, I'll see what's going on. 15, 20, like 300. It also helped the neighborhood. So you're the manager. You can have zero walk-ups, zero walk-up, all advance. Everyone buying 35 in advance, 40 with fees, has seen the band before. At Brooklyn Bowl, you'll do some advance, it's less, but we would do 300-400 walk-ups.
Whereas at Irving Plaza, whoever bought the tickets, that's the
zero.
end of it.
You're the
It's done.
manager.
Yeah.
You want new people to see your band.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. When you're in a band, you want new people to see it. So that's how Brooklyn Bowl took off. It was $15, $20 to see the same band that was $35. We would get walk-up, boom, boom, boom. You're the manager. You're doing 800-900 people. We used to hear jokes. Agents would be like, yeah, I got a call from Steve, this agent. He says his band did 900 a night at the Bowl. And we joked. He'd say, go fuck yourself. Frickin', anyone could do that. Because it became a soft ticket venue. In our business, when you play a festival, it's called a soft ticket. When you're headlining alone, it's a hard ticket. We're a hard ticket tonight. It was frickin' Shapiro. Hard tickets are harder. If you can get a soft ticket and get the same money, you take the soft ticket. So that's how Brooklyn Bowl, honestly, it worked. We're still doing it today in Nashville or Vegas. Because we have the food, the bowl, and the extra revenue, we can charge less.
Wow.
I don't know how I got there, but
So
we got
have
a question
time
over
for
here?
One more question. Just one more question. That's it.
Okay.
How you doing, Peter? Good to see you. I'm Concert Joe's daughter. Do I need
Pennsylvania Law. University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so I'm the daughter of Deadheads, clearly. My parents actually met at Wetlands, of all things.
Mike?
Oh, can you not hear me? Now you can hear me. My parents actually met at Wetlands, of all things, so it happens. And I wanted to know what you think. I don't think there's any other band that has the kind of following that the Dead has, the kind of loyalty that they have. I mean, they haven't put out new music in 30 years, and yet my parents only listen to the Dead. And so I was wondering if you thought that, what is it that makes Deadhead so loyal? And do you think that, I think it's probably a lot of the live music, and do you think in the new streaming age, if you'll ever meet that kind of loyalty in another band?
Good news and bad news.
The bad news first.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
There's just lightning, literally lightning bolts. That's funny. It just struck. I think it would be hard to recreate the world. By the way, we talked about this stuff. I don't think we could do Brooklyn Bowl opening today the same way. When we opened it, there were no podcasts. There was no streaming. There was 10 TV shows. Sopranos was big. Now there's 200 TV shows, 200 podcasts, Donald Trump, all that stuff didn't exist. Snap, TikTok, none of that. But here's the good news. We can keep reinventing that music. Something about those songs, I don't know, it's incredible. You can keep listening to it and listening to it and listening to it, and it never fades. It's incredible. And now we're redoing it. We're working on, and Phil, we talked about Phil. He likes to turn new people onto it. And by the way, when you're a new player coming to play with Phil Lesh, I remember Eric Krasnow coming for the first time. Phil at soundcheck will do 3 or 4 songs out of the 18. He wants you. I remember Eric being backstage nervous, oh my God, we didn't rehearse all these songs. Because Phil wants to drop them in the fire. He wants you to feel it. Well, that's where the magic comes. Yeah. We talked when you don't know where it's gonna go. And in this next round, we're doing 9 nights in October. He's 82 years old. And we're going to bring new people into those Phil and Friends bands that have not done it before. And we're going to try and keep and that was what's great about Dead 50 was supposed to be the end and ending. It ended up being like a whole new kind of beginning. And that's what's great is like young people get to go. And J-Rad does it their version faster. And Grateful Shred does their version. And Dark Star doesn't exactly, there's, I don't think it's going to, I think it's going to keep going.
I think there's also a point that is worth remembering, and that is that at the beginning of the Dead, say Pink Floyd in London in '66, those were local scenes. It was not an international sensation. It started in the community. You know, it started in those dance halls in San Francisco because the bands were forming. They needed places to play. Bill Graham was a local promoter. He didn't become national until he opened the Fillmore East in New York. Pink Floyd played in a club on Tottenham Court Road called the UFO, and it was a basement. And so a lot of these things that we take for granted as history, they all start as community. And if community can sustain itself, then that's a miracle in itself. If it becomes something else, the culture has to take over. Society actually has to, you know, have another idea of what it's supposed to be. You've got to look forward and take what you have in the community and carry it, as he says, carry it forward. But the fact that you can keep it in the community and start there means that anything is possible. It's just that you can't expect the same thing to happen again because you have to reinvent it for yourself. You can't reinvent it for what happened 30, 40, and now 50 years ago. I would have loved to have been at, you know, the Avalon Ballroom to see Big Brother and Quicksilver. I managed to see Moby Grape at Wetlands. So everybody gets theirs at some point as long as you stay committed to it. And the one thing that is great about music is that it'll never let you down.
Amen, huh?
I just want to say one thing. We were backstage and they were talking about the timing and all this length. And we were
Sorry about that.
No, you're right here. Ready? We said, what'd I say to you? Hour 10.
You said it.
And we're on 1 hour and 10 minutes right now.
Let's give them a round of applause, everyone.
Hour 10.